Thanks again for coming. And just as a reminder, this is going to be our third edition, kind of a monthly talk with a top producer. And so we've got Kim Connor here with us today. And so I know that's why everybody's in the room, which is great. So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of background just on her real estate career, and then I'm going to ask her just to give us a little bit more background on her kind of her life. But just here's a little bit of info so that everybody kind of set the stage on her career. She received a real estate license in 2006, and she got into real estate really selling in 2008. So she's been in the real estate business for really less than 5 years. In 2012, she was recognized as part of Intero's top 1%, which is one of the top 2,200 agents out of 2,200, or was one of the 22 agents out of the top 2,200 agents in the company, part of our Intero's Chairman Circle. In 2012, which was her first full year in the real estate business, she was the #1 contributor to our foundation, the Intero Foundation. Big round of applause for that. That's awesome. That's very cool. She was also in her first full year where she was nominated to receive the Intero's 2012 Value Award, which is given to the agent that represents all the vision and values of Intero, really what makes Intero different, which is awesome. And get this, and she didn't know this until she just came in. I was kind of going over it with her. So the last 12 months, so if you remove the first quarter and just go back, last 12 months, she's closed 56 transactions and has gross closed commissions of $1,045,183. So good job. That's awesome. So pretty awesome. So what I wanted to just start off by doing, I asked some of you guys to send me some questions, and I have those filtered in here, and we'll definitely get those asked. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what did you do before real estate, why'd you decide to get in the real estate business?
I grew up in San Jose and went to school locally, college and whatnot. My family had a business, a premium and incentive business, so that was kind of always something that I was, attached to and whatnot. When we were kids, my parents were like, well, if you're sitting there watching TV, stuff some envelopes. So, penny and envelope and whatnot. So it was always, we're always doing something for business. And then my parents got into buying up some properties back in the 70s, and met Mr. Steve Becerra. He was actually, my parents hired him when he was going to Bellarmine to do some yard cleanup and do different things like that. So we were down there scraping, paint off glass and doing different things for different properties and stuff. And then I went into work for a lawyer for a few years when I was going to college, thinking I was going to go into law. And then my dad said, well, we want you to come work for us, and let me make it clear, we'll take the car away and whatnot. So I said, okay, when do I start? And then, so I worked in that business for several years until my dad passed away and my mom moved to Florida. And so I took over the property management and did that for a couple years, and then took a couple years off and golfed and played and had some fun. And then I was planning a trip with a friend and his brother for his 40th birthday, and we were going to go to Florida for a couple weeks, and he was going to take a second job, and I said, oh gosh, well, if you can take a second job to earn some money, I guess I can go back to work. So I answered an ad in Craigslist for an assistant to 2 agents at Century 21 Champion in Cupertino for 20 hours a week, doing a little bit of mail, maybe organizing some files. And so I was freaking out because I said, oh my God, I haven't done a resume and haven't worked for anybody but family. But so I went there and got hired, and I was going to get my license. I knew that. And so I got my license in 2006 and started working open houses every weekend. And then my intent was always to do that. I don't really think I'm assistant material because I'm, probably working really hard and doing a lot more than I really should be doing. And so then I got my first listing in September of 2006. And it was a crazy thing. I worked a weekend. It was Labor Day, and no one wanted to do the open house. And the agent said, can you help me? Will you do it? And I said, okay. So I went and did that and met some people, and they gave me a listing. And then I got a buyer sale, and I got my second listing in 2007. And all that time I was still doing, coordinating work and whatnot. And then finally, I think I had a couple other transactions that year. And then in January of 2008, the one gal had fired me twice, and the other agent had left to go to Coldwell Banker. And I said, you know what, this is just really crazy. I should just, put on my head and do this. And, I just prayed to God. I said, keep me busy, keep me busy. And then every time I got busy and I'd freak out, I'd say, thank you, God. And then I just kind of go on. But, and then from that time on, I just, that's what,
rest is history.
The rest is history, yeah.
So why don't you go back to when you just first, so when you broke away from being working for those assistants, like what did you do your first, year, 2 years, 3 years to kind of get your business started? Like what was really like the key things that really kind of got you going?
Well, as soon as I got my license, I started marketing. I started putting together some marketing campaigns that were a little bit different than everybody else was doing.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on maybe what that was? Do you remember?
Well, I think it's very, very hard when you first start out in this business because it's like credit. You have to have credit to get credit. In order to get credit, you need credit. So in order to talk specifically about being successful or being capable, I guess, people want to know, what have you done? And that's the hardest thing you come up against is people say, well, how many deals have you had, or what do you do? How many listings? And you don't know what to say, so you kind of stumble. And one thing that one of the agents told me when I first started is, go after listings. Everybody says, we work with buyers, and that's great. And in different markets, it's okay. But go after a listing because the buyers are going to come anyways. So focus on that. So I said, well, I'm going to pick a neighborhood that maybe nobody else is targeting. And I picked an upper end neighborhood in Evergreen, and no one was really spending a lot of money there. We were coming off of that crazy time, kind of like it is now, where houses were just selling and selling. But I put a message out there that no one else was putting out there, and I'm consistent. Everything I put out there says staging makes a difference, and then I have a slogan that ties into that. And I just put it out there, and I put pictures of nice looking properties, and I wasn't tied down to market stats and different things like that. And somebody called and said, I think I've had 3 other agents. I think you might be able to just turn this around for me. And that's what happened. I sold a really nice house, and I staged it, and prayed every day when I was open, because people would drive by and they're like, oh, I've seen that before, But finally got it sold, and then the market kind of tanked.
Yeah.
So
you took that area of Evergreen. What else were you doing?
Well, I was doing open houses every weekend, and it was very frustrating. I think that's probably one of the hardest times. You get yourself all fired up, and you prepare, and maybe over prepare, you do whatever, and you sit in an open house and you talk to people, and they go around into different neighborhoods, and there's agents that are giving big credits if they're the listing agent, and back and forth, and it's you're defeatist. You don't know what to say to somebody, and again, you don't have any traction because you're really not really doing much. And then but I sent something out every 3 weeks, and I talked to people at open houses, and I became I educated myself. I was smart about what I did. I didn't necessarily go to all the homes because it's hard to do, but if you practice your numbers and you look at the sheets, you can talk about the houses, look at the pictures, look at the floor plans, get some information about where you're going to be doing an open house, and just let people know that you care about what you do and that you're smart about what you do, and they come to you. And that's just, I think, kind of how it started.
Okay, cool. So struggles in the real estate business. So, what was been your biggest struggle the last 5 years, and how did you overcome it, or how are you working on overcoming it, or what do you think your biggest struggles have been?
I think in the beginning it was just, how do you sell yourself when you don't really have anything about yourself to sell, and then trying to be consistent. If you it's like with your keys. If you put your keys in the same place every time you walk in the door, you know where your keys are. So when you're working with paperwork and transactions and things like that, you never know. You always want to assume that the listing you have now is just going to be the footstep to the listing you're going to get next, or the sale. So if you do all your paperwork on the front end, you leave yourself kind of free. So when the next opportunity comes along, you're right there, just staying on top of what you do, and you're not backtracking. And so I think that that's really, kind of opening your mindset up, your head, that, I'm on my way. It's the next opportunity. And when you get a listing, it's not if I sell, it's when you sell. It's about changing that attitude about what it is you're doing and being positive about doing that. And then you go out and you see what are agents doing in your neighborhood where you've got a listing or whatnot. So I knew right away when I was working in the Cupertino neighborhood, you go pick up a flyer and they'd have a price reduction, and there would be a photocopy of probably a color flyer with a Sharpie crossed off.
A photocopy?
Photocopy of a color flyer with a Sharpie with a price reduction. And I thought, well, that's kind of cheesy for $1 million house. What are you going to do? So you pick the kind of marketing you're going to do. You stay consistent, whether it's a $300,000 condo or a $2 million house, and you spruce it up a little bit. And then when you're in the neighborhood, you do something different for people. You talk to them about, you give them market updates, you give them a little extra something, and you set your stage for what it is that you do different than everybody else. I remember I had a listing, it was kind of a tear down in Cupertino, and somebody came in, we thought this couldn't be you because we didn't think you did this kind of listing. It was kind of at 814 square feet and whatever. I said, no, that, I pretty much do anything. So, but just be, really consistent. And again, look at what other people are doing and think, how can I tweak that? So if everybody in your neighborhood is doing an open house 1 to 4, right? Be open from 12:30 to 4:30. I have so many people that come through and says, we always know you're open late, so we always save you to last or whatever. And you get so many people straggling, When you go into doing an open house for somebody else, get familiar with the house. Go to it beforehand. Find out what you can know about it. If you're educated, people will listen. There are so many realtors out there that people come in, they ask questions, they go, oh, I don't know. Yeah. And people come in and me and say, my God, you know something. Tell us more, tell us more. And that really gets people coming back and following you and asking if you can help them.
Yeah, and it's I know you said it is hard to get out and preview property and tour homes, but I mean, I'm telling you, that is one of the most important things, I think, especially as a new agent, but even as an experienced agent. I mean, there's so much confidence that comes with knowledge of what's going on in the market and housing, and then when people come in, you can have an educated conversation with them about what's going on in the community. But I think more times than not, what happens is most of the buyers walking into your open house know more than you do, because they've been out seeing all the houses, so they already know what's going on in the market, but you're supposed to be the authority. So how does that work, So you talked a little bit about your marketing and your branding, and you talked about the feature sheet that was colored, that was photocopied, that had the price striked out in it. Talk a little bit how important you think consistency in brand and image and making sure that you always do top quality stuff, or do you think there's a place that you can skimp along the way, or what's kind of your philosophy on that?
Well, I think that if you start with a standard, you have to stay true to your standard. I mean, you have to decide what kind of realtor do you want to be. Everybody's not the same. So I knew I wanted to stage my own property, so that's part of my platform, what I do. I don't charge for it. It's part of my service. I stage the whole house.
And you do, and literally she stages it, just so, especially for those that are watching this, she literally stages the house. She has basically a staging company kind of as a separate business outside of a real estate company.
Yeah, I have people that help me obviously move furniture and hang artwork and do things like that. But I remember when I first started, I'd rent a van, I'd go to Enterprise and I'd rent a van and I'd have somebody move my furniture. I pack all my boxes and take it there and unload it and pack it up. And I used to pride myself that I've only moved twice in my whole life, and now I move like once or twice a week. So, yeah. And everybody can't do that, and it costs a lot of money to do that and stuff. So it's not like you have to feel like you have to compete with somebody that does it. But I help people in the office here. I've staged for Karen and Tony and Brett and Art Marion and whatnot, and I go in and consult for them and give them an idea of what they need to do and stuff like that. And I think that the other thing too, I think in life, is that if you are giving of yourself and you're helping people where you can, then other good things come your way. And I think that's kind of how you have to move. Decide how you're going to move in the world and what you're going to do. If you only want to do 5 transactions a year, do them the best. Be the best 5 transaction person a year or whatnot. If you're going to be a buyer's agent, be the best there is. Go the extra mile. Ask the questions. Figure things out. Don't be not willing to turn up information. Call and ask questions. I've had clients that come back to me and says, I had an agent, but you knew so much and you called me back even if you knew I had an agent. And I've had other people that say, I wanted to work with you because you weren't hounding me at the open house. You didn't ask me immediately, do you have an agent? Because I think that's a turnoff for people. That's almost like they sense the blood. And you want to work like you don't need the money. You want to work like you don't need that transaction in order to pay your mortgage, even if you do. When you first start, it's the scariest freaking thing. I can't even begin to describe it when you're trying to get business going and whatnot, and you think, okay, well, I'm going to send out, it's $1,200 to send out 2,000 postcards, and then I got to do this and I got to do that, and okay, my mortgage is due and whatever. But you have to keep on going, and you have to believe that if you're working hard, that something will come of it. And don't be so tight that you're not willing to do that extra thing that a client wants you to do, because it does make a difference.
Yeah. One thing you said is I know you do so much more than you're just not just a realtor. You're a consultant, and you consult with them. And so that's one of the things I always talk to you guys about is people aren't, I don't think nowadays, looking for a realtor. Kind of, they're really looking for an advisor and a consultant who can really help them navigate, not just get their house listed and sold or put them into a house, because anybody can drive somebody around, write them an offer, and throw them into a house. They're really looking for somebody who can counsel them and advise them and give them input along the way, and help them make a smart decision, whether they be a buyer or a seller. And staging's part of it. Watching CNBC is part of it, so that you can have that knowledge and that. I think so many people just get so pigeonholed into that one little house, and they're not global at all, you know, and I think that's just a real important thing is being a consultant.
Well, and I also think too, people say, well, can you come over and look and tell me what you would do if you were selling my house? And first thing I say to them is, I'm in the people business, so sure. You know, I'll make time to do that. And the other thing too is when you're working with a client, listen to them first up. And people get desperate at times like this. They think that if they don't get a house, then all of a sudden they're sacrificing all the things that they told you up front that they didn't want. And so if you're mindful of what they said, you have to be patient with them and don't push them. Because if you push them to make it, you know, to enter into a contract and buy a house that had 5 of the things that they said they would never settle for, they're not going to love you later. They're going to be frustrated because, you know, that doesn't make sense. You have to be willing to walk away for them, even if you need the money desperately.
That'll always turn into, I've done that numerous times, right? Talked friends and clients out of buying a house that they wanted to buy because they just didn't think it was the best house for them. And ultimately, they need to make that decision. But, you know, that ends up turning into multiple deals over the life of your career as a result of doing that.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
We actually had one of our newer agents, you know, who's holding open houses, kind of getting himself started, and he was out and he bumped into some people who wanted to buy a new home, and they weren't sure should we sell our existing house, and he called me saying, hey, how do I talk to the person to convince them to sell their house and not turn it into a rental? And I said, well, you know, first of all, I don't know that you shouldn't be calling trying to convince them to sell their house. You need to kind of help them figure out what's in their best interest. Now, in the back of my mind, I already knew probably it was going to be in their best interest to sell it because of the tax consequences and all of that thing with regard to being a primary residence. But I think, again, that same thing is you can't want it so bad. It needs to be always about helping people. It can't be about making money. And the minute it's about helping people, you'll make a fortune. The minute it's about making money, you'll never make a cent. And so, and it is hard, I know. I think no matter what level you're at, whether you're new or you're experienced, and you've been doing it for a long time, you're super successful. It's hard sometimes to be thinking that. But if you can almost pray that every day before you get to work, let me just be about helping people, not making money. And if you live your life and run your business that way, you'll make a fortune. You really, really will. But it is a hard thing. I get it to do. So any other form of lead generation activities that you're doing today that you maybe weren't doing before, open houses?
Well, I finally feel comfortable to ask people that I know to trust me to sell their house.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe you ever go out and ask for people. My ex-husband was in insurance, and the first thing they tell you when you're insurance is get together everybody that you know, friends, family, and whatnot, and ask them if you can sell them life insurance. And so you go do that, and then you get great stature, you know, having so many people wanting to give you, you know, help in the market and whatnot. And then the next year you're like, okay, now where do I get my business? So I always thought that, you know, until you prove yourself and what you can do, that's when you go back to people that you know because you're successful. You don't want to ask for too many favors along the way. So I think I've only done one transaction for somebody the house next door to where I grew up.
And that's one of the things that we're going to work on. Your database.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Because I don't have crazy. I don't have one that I can mail to on a regular basis, which is crazy, but.
Yeah, you know, and I mean so that's one of the workshops we're going to be doing here, you know, and as I was telling you, I think the 4 things, you know, it's database, geographical farming, previewing property, and holding open houses. I mean, that's the foundation of a successful real estate business.
I do open houses every weekend if I have a listing, and it's been a long while since I've worked somebody else's open house, but I would do that. I would help somebody to work an open house. I think the other thing you need to do is that, you know, you can walk something around. I will never do that. I will never door knock. I do have people that walk stuff around. I will never knock on somebody's door. For me, it's an intrusion if somebody knocks on my door. So I will never do something that I would not, you know, value for somebody doing for me. But you also have to do things that touch people in other ways. So if you walk stuff around and you mail stuff occasionally, then do something that's service related in your neighborhood. Organize a garage sale where you are the coordinator of putting together a brochure and letting people know what people have for sale. Put a dumpster in a neighborhood. It might cost you a little bit of money, but you park yourself outside the dumpster and it fills up really fast, and you meet people and you find out where they live and whatnot, and they're grateful for that kind of help. But do things like that along the way. Don't just don't have it all be real estate. People have to know that you're a human being. They want to know about you. They want to know what makes you different. They want to connect with you. So it's great to connect with people about real estate, but you also have to connect to them about people. I went to a Hobbs Herder seminar a couple years ago, and they said, you know, if you don't have a great memory, and you get busy, and a lot of people don't, keep a sheet of your clients and what they have, what their kids' names are, whatnot. And if you ask them a personal question, gee, look, what have you guys been doing? And they said, oh, we just got back from a cruise, or we're planning a cruise, or this and that. Make a note of that, and then call them, and they're grateful that you remember something, because you know you're so busy and you're disconnected from their lives most of the time. But then they think, oh my God, they care. And when you care, people are more willing to call you and ask you advice and what should I do. And I mean, I did a lease for somebody in a neighborhood 2 years ago. I told him it's not the time to sell. It really is not. You're going to lose money. He just called me. He says, listen, we're going to buy a house. We want to buy a house in Evergreen. We've been renting. We're probably going to sell our house. Can we call you in about a month? Sure. You know, so.
Yeah, again, it's that, you know, I was telling, and for guys, it's a little harder sometimes, I think, to work your database. We just don't tend to stay connected with our old friends, you know, as well as ladies do. We're just not that good at that. But, you know, so for me, I was telling the group that I was meeting with the other day, I mean, I just texted some of my old friends, and I really didn't have any ulterior motive other than I just had talked to some of my old college buddies and guys I went to high school with, and it was nothing more than, you know, hey, Joe, I was thinking about you, just want to touch base, hope you and the family are doing well. You know, that was it. And, you know, as a result of that, I mean, thank God I only sent like 4 or 5 of those because they turned into like 4 or 5 coffees and lunches of friends of mine that I just hadn't been connected with a long time. I mean, they so appreciated it. It wasn't like I was calling them and, you know, not that I'm selling houses, but it wasn't really ever real estate related. Of course, that's all they wanted to talk about when I was sitting down and talking with them. But just little things like that, like you said, I think being genuine, you know, don't make it just always about real estate. Same thing on things like Facebook, you know, those kinds of things. I think those are all things your own personal brand. And why people are going to do business with you a lot of the times isn't because of how successful you are in real estate. It's because they like you as a person and they respect you. You know, so just always remember that as you're kind of out there. So if you had a new agent or a struggling agent, you had to give them some advice on, like, you know, here's the things that you need to do for the next 6 months to get yourself back on your feet or get your business going, what would you tell that brand new licensee or the person who's maybe been in the business for 5, 10 years but just been in a funk and can't figure it out? What would you do?
Well, first thing is, again, decide what kind of realtor you want to be and move towards that goal. Don't try to be me. Don't try to be Andy C. Don't try to be anybody else but yourself. Figure out what you have, what knowledge you have that can help somebody else. And then try to find a way to parlay that into what you do. So if you've had experience in anything, you can talk about that with confidence. So use a little bit of that. So you know more about houses and stuff than most people. If you've had an experience with a garage door, or you know, you have a funny story about, you know, the garbage disposal stopped working and you never knew there was a little button underneath it until somebody showed you, and then you thought, or you had this funny conversation. Have you ever tried to put on a soap dispenser on a sink and you can't figure out why you can't get there? You know, and how, you know, to have somebody else a hand in and whatever. People find that you connect with them like that, and so use those kinds of things. But I also think that it's important to know the business. I think it's important to know the paperwork. I think that the worst thing you can ever do is get a listing and not know how to fill out a listing agreement, or to get a contract and not know how to fill out a counteroffer. So get familiar with the paperwork. If you know somebody might need help and you want to learn, ask if you can help. I think one of the greatest things that you can do, and I know that it helped me because I wasn't fearful of the paperwork when I started writing, you know, putting people into contract and stuff myself, because I was working with it. I came up with a system of what an escrow folder looks like and how to stay on top of it. And you demand all the paperwork be done up front. Don't leave stuff to straggle, because while you're closing that transaction, you got to be working on your next one. And so be confident of that. So if you're hesitant in what you do and whatnot, I did this when I first started. I said, give me a couple scenarios so I can practice writing a contract. And so people did. They gave me a couple different scenarios and whatnot, and I practiced a contract, and they gave it back to me, and it was wrong, and I marked here and I marked there and whatever. But then I got over that hump, and I became confident in doing that. And then ask somebody, can I go to an inspection with you if you're not familiar with what things are? So you listen to what things are. So when somebody asks, oh my gosh, that sounds really bad, and you can say, well, it's not really, because this is how you go about fixing it. Again, you give them confidence that you know what you're talking about and that it's not an overwhelming problem. So make yourself useful. Things in motion stay in motion. And the worst thing is getting depressed and not knowing where you're going to get your next transaction. But if you're busy doing something else, if you're busy working in the business, and even if you're helping somebody else who might be willing to pay you a little bit of money to get the job done or whatnot, you're going to find that you're entrenched in something, and you're thinking about it more, and you're positive about it, because you're not sitting there thinking, oh my God, I got to make another phone call, right, or whatever. And it makes a huge difference. Yeah,
good. So one of the questions that was asked, I mean, we're in an incredibly tough market. You're primarily a listing agent. You do a lot of listings. You know, what advice or what do you look for when you're a listing agent? You're getting, you know, 10 or 15 or 20 offers on a listing. What are the most important things? What advice would you give to an agent to give themselves the best shot at getting the offer accepted? I mean, obviously price and terms and all, but what are some other tricks that you think are, not even tricks, but things that are important to you as a listing agent when you're talking with an agent?
Well, when I first started writing offers and having to present them, and I had a couple clients and we were looking in the upper end market, and they didn't know me. They did Century 21, huh? Who's that? And they go in and I make a presentation. I always try to be the best at what I do, and I had custom folders made and whatever. And they'd be going through my look, like everything they wanted was in the packet that I gave them, and they like, who are you again? Where are you from? You know? So what I tell people is listen to what the agent has to say. If it says on the, and I know this, people are going to laugh, but if it says on the private remarks, PRDS contracts only, don't call me up and ask me if you can send me a car contract. It's what I prefer. I have the right to ask what I prefer. And so many people do that. So then I'm going to be very specific. I have offer instructions. This is what I want you to do. I want to make sure you've read the disclosures. I provide all the disclosures up front, all the inspections. I want you to sign them. I want to know that who I'm getting in contract with isn't going to backpedal. So do the work. Call me. I'll tell you anything you want to know. You want to know how many offers, you can call me right before. I'm not going to disclose a price that I've gotten that I can't. But listen to what the agent has to say. Be proactive. Call them and ask them. You know, my client's really interested. Is anything that the seller would be important to them to know, to have, to want, whatever. And then sit down with your client and say, listen, it's really important to them. This has been their house forever and ever. So put a letter together. Have it be from your client. Have it be heartfelt. Have it be something that, you know, it speaks truly to what they value in the home and whatnot. I know when I sold Sam's dad's house, and I represented a buyer for the house, and they put together this amazing letter. And I said, listen, this is very personal to him. He built the house, this and that. So they sat down and I gave him the letter, and he kept on going. We were talking, he kept on going back to the letter, and it made him emotional. You know, he started tearing up and he goes, Kim, next time you sell a house for me, you never give me a letter like that first. You know? So you just listen and you do those things and include a picture and, you know, talk about why they want it and, you know, talk about the good things about your clients. And agents are receptive to that. They know if you work hard on the front end. I want to be in contact with an agent that I've talked to. I want to be in contact with an agent who listened to what I was going to do. And I want to be in contact with an agent who's not going to make me do all the work for their buyer in order to close the transaction.
So again, it all kind of comes back to that, you know, presentation from the start to the finish, really, and everything that you do. You know, quality. You know, whether it be the marketing pieces that you're delivering, whether it be the listing presentation that you're going on, or whether it be the offer that you're presenting, make sure that it can be the best that it can be and it really stands out. You're on top of it. And I know that was the same way I always felt. I mean, you know, when you have an agent come in and they're a little out of control, you know, no matter how good their offer was, their paperwork's unorganized, and you know, it's like, oh my God, you know, this is, no matter what the situation is, you're always, when I was a listing agent, I was always a little bit, okay, this is going to be, no matter what situation, it's going to be a little dicey. Versus sometimes you maybe get an agent who comes in that maybe wasn't the best price, but super professional, super organized, super on top of things. You know, everything was like just down to stapled properly. All the little details, which don't sound like a big deal, but to me that says so much about somebody that, you know, a lot of times I'd give that person the opportunity because I felt it was in my client's best interest, because I knew that the transaction would be much smoother going with that person than versus even the other higher offer. And so many people get, well, my offer was the highest. Yeah, but also if you're just beating on the listing agents during the entire time leading up to the time that the offer gets presented, you want to endear yourself to everybody. I think that's just always, and I constantly am talking about that, is endear yourself to everybody. Your competition, to your clients, to everybody. That doesn't mean be a rollover. That just means be respectful, you know, but you can be forceful, respectful, you know, and compassionate all at the same time, but be in control. So.
And I went back to somebody on a property that I sold this year and said, you know, I'm going back to you first. We're going to counter, but you've been the only person that has done everything that I've asked. You're a little bit less than some other people. I'm going to give you the first opportunity. If you can do these things and you're willing to do it and you're stepping there for your client, I know the way you've communicated with me is going to tell me how we're going to have a nice, smooth transaction. And he said, well, thank you so much. And they did. He was proactive. He was communicative. He was getting to me before, you know, it's 10 o'clock on the day contingencies are supposed to be removed, telling me this is where we are, this is what we're doing, and that saves me a phone call. I'm so grateful for those things. So,
yeah. Good. Okay. So, any other just questions specifically from this group in here that you guys would like to ask Kim that maybe didn't get asked? Anything at all? Yes. And so why don't you ask it, and I'll just kind of repeat the question so that everybody who's watching it on YouTube can hear it.
Where do you get your energy
So where does she get her energy?
Where do I get my energy? Well, you know, I think that I made a commitment to this profession, and so for me, no one wants to be around somebody, even if it's the things you think inside your head. And I have voices in my head, just like all of you, that you know you don't ever let them get you down. You give yourself permission. I was going through a broke-up relationship in 2008, and so I only gave myself permission to feel bad about it twice a day. And once was, you know, when I was trying to clear out my head, and once was in the morning. The rest of the time, I had no permission to do that. And then you stay busy. Like I said, you have to stay up. I'd much rather talk to somebody who is, you know, positive about things in general instead of talking about how bad the market is. If you go out and, you know, I would have never sold a house if all I ever talked about in 2008 and 9 and whatnot was, oh my God, how bad's the market? Well, the market's challenging, but that doesn't mean you can't overcome the challenges. And then set your pace. Everybody, like I said, everybody can't work the same amount of time. So, you know, figure out what you need for a fulfilling life and then work accordingly.
You know, it's you always hear it from like successful people, or if you read books on success, it's like, you know, if you think your day is going to be good, you're right. And if you think your day is going to be bad, you're right. You know, and a part of it is you have to, and like you said, I'm the same way. You know, I'm pretty positive and upbeat, and everyone says I always have a smile on my face. You know what days? Guys, sometimes my days suck. You know, and I don't, you know, it's like we all go through that, and you do have to go through, whether that be sometimes listening to uplifting music and just getting yourself in that right state, whether it be going for a workout, whether it be reading, you know, a great quote, whether it be talking to somebody who's inspiring and motivating and just getting you fired back up, you know. But you have to be really careful because, you know, if you get in a funk and you stay in the funk, it gets worse and worse every single day. And so you can't let yourself slip back. Just the same thing happens the other way, though, too. If you can keep yourself positive and inspired and motivated, you're not going to have little, you know, speed bumps along the way, but I think that you're going to continue to just get more and more positive and just have a better attitude about everything. So just be super conscious about it, and I think you need to have time every single day. And I do it first thing in the morning. I've talked about this. You know, I read my Napoleon Hill because I forward it to you guys sometimes. You know, I do my dictionary word of the day, which I forward to you guys someday. You know, I read a daily devotional that gets emailed to me. You know, that's just important to me. You know, and I try and just listen, and I listen to inspiring and motivating music when I work out, and I try and visualize what I want my life to be like and the things I'm thankful for in my life. And you know, even sometimes when I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I don't know that I can do this day again. You know, by the end of the time I'm done with that, and it's maybe early, and it was hard for me to get my butt out of bed in the morning because it's not always easy. When you're done, you're just feeling like, okay, I can go conquer the world. But you have to just work on putting yourself back into the state.
Well, I think sometimes it's as easy as if you imagine just say tomorrow or just after today, every time I answer the phone, I'm going to answer the phone with a smile. Yeah. And I'm going to have that lift in my voice. So you answer the phone, you know, you can say hello, or you can say, hi, this is Kim. You have a choice of how you do, and that's, people want to hear that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so you get the, how's your day? Fine. Okay. You know, it's like, to me, I'm always like, downer. You know, it's like awesome. It's a great day, you know, because you know what? If you keep saying that to yourself, it will be. And if you say, it's okay, it's fine, you're right. It's going to be okay and it's going to be fine. You know, so just, you got to focus on the self-talk. Well, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Let's give her a huge round of applause.